In my previous life, I learned a painful lesson about love. I had married Mary, my sister's best friend, despite her doubts. That marriage turned cold and empty. The breaking point came when I had a car accident and needed blood urgently, but she chose to watch the northern lights in Alaska with her ex instead of helping me. That experience taught me that you can't force someone to love you, no matter how hard you try. Now, in this life, I was at a party with Mary again. We had been secretly dating for 7 years, but something felt different tonight. The bar's private room was dark, with lights flickering softly. Mary, who had been drinking, looked at me with surprisingly clear eyes and said, "George, let me find you a better girl, okay? Just stop bothering me from now on." This time, I simply smiled and said, "Okay." My calm response seemed to shock her. She wasn't expecting me to agree so easily. The old me would have gotten upset and argued with her, but now I felt nothing. It was like hearing someone talk about the weather. Mary started to say something else, but then Nina, my sister, walked in from getting some fresh air. Nina had a playful look on her face and said, "Guess who I just saw outside? Your first love. He's pretty drunk, and some large women are dragging him into a private room." As soon as Nina finished speaking, Mary jumped up and rushed out. We could hear chaos outside and the sound of glass breaking. I stayed in my seat, calmly peeling oranges from the fruit plate. It was a habit I had kept from our relationship. Mary loved eating fruit but hated peeling them, so I would always peel them for her before she ate. Nina always noticed how I took care of Mary. "You're so nice to her," she would tease. "You never treat your own sister this well. You must like her, right?" There were so many times I almost told Nina about our relationship, but Mary would always jump in first, wrapping her arm around mine playfully. "Maybe George just thinks of me more like a sister than you," she would say. "That's what brothers do. They take care of their sisters. Got a problem with that?" Over time, I realized Mary wanted to keep our relationship secret, so I stopped trying to tell anyone. That's how we managed to date for 7 years without anyone finding out. Now, Nina stood at the doorway, looking outside at the commotion. She turned back to me, still calmly eating fruit, and teased, "Hey, George, Mary's out there fighting with someone. Shouldn't you help?" I swallowed my last piece of orange and shook my head. Why should I get involved in women's fights? Nina raised an eyebrow, but said nothing more before heading out to help. I stayed in the private room until the noise outside died down. When I finally stepped out, I saw something that felt like a punch to my gut. Mary was holding on to Tom, her first love, the man she could never truly let go of. He was drunk and barely standing, but instead of pushing him away, she held him closer. Her dark eyes flashed with anger and pain she probably didn't even realize she felt. Nina saw them too and asked me loudly enough for Mary to hear, "George, do you think they might get back together?" Mary's head snapped up at that. When she saw me standing there, guilt flashed across her face. "I'm not getting back together with him," she quickly said. "He's drunk. I'm just helping him." I forced a smile and shook my head. "I understand, Sister Mary. Brother Tom looks really drunk. You should take him home." I saw her frown slightly at how I addressed her, but she didn't argue. As she left with Tom, she called back to Nina, "Don't stay out too late, okay?" As I watched them walk away together, my heart felt like it was being stabbed by 1,000 tiny needles. But this time, I knew better than to follow. The irony of my situation hit me hard as I remembered my past life. I had gotten what I wanted then, marriage to Mary, but happiness remained out of reach. The memories came flooding back, each one more painful than the last. On my birthday, all I wanted was to spend a quiet day with her. "Can you stop being so annoying? I'm busy with work," she had snapped. Later that day, I saw photos on social media of her enjoying the Grand Canyon with Tom. Once, when I was doubled over from a severe stomach ulcer, I begged her to come with me to the hospital. "I'm not a doctor," she said coldly. "Go by yourself. Why are you bothering me?" Yet a week later, she rushed Tom to the hospital for a simple cold, fussing over him the whole time. The worst memory was of our wedding anniversary. I had planned everything perfectly, but fate had other plans. On my way home, I got into a terrible car accident. When the doctor called Mary for surgery permission, her response chilled me to the bone. "Is he dead? If not, don't bother me." Through the phone, I could hear Tom's excited voice in the background. "Mary, look, the northern lights are amazing. This trip was totally worth it." After that call, my wounds started bleeding heavily, turning the white hospital sheets crimson. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony in my heart. That was how I died in my past life. Back in the present, I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling a ghost of that old pain. I smiled sadly to myself. "Mary, if my love is such a burden to you, then I'll stop loving you." Nina and I went home early that night. The next morning, I woke up groggy and checked my phone. There was a message from Tom, a photo of Mary sleeping at his place. "Mary stayed with me last night," he wrote. I felt nothing as I typed back a simple "O," but Tom wasn't finished. He sent another photo, this time of breakfast. "Mary made this for me," he bragged. "Look at these cute heart-shaped eggs." I had to laugh. In all our time together, Mary had never once cooked for me. When we were together, Mary always said she was a spoiled princess who didn't want to do housework. That's why I learned to cook. I wanted her to have warm, delicious meals whenever she needed them. But now, seeing her cook for Tom made all my past efforts feel like a joke. I put my phone down after seeing Tom's messages and went back to eating my breakfast. Then Mary texted me, not mentioning anything about last night. "Those lotus root balls you made last time were really good. Make some more and bring them to my office today. And remember, no cilantro." That message made my heart sink. Mary had always loved cilantro. She would even order extra when we had hot pot. It hit me then. These meals weren't for her at all. After thinking for a moment, I replied, "Okay," but opened a food delivery app instead and sent a random home-cooked meal to her office. That evening, I went to dinner with Nina. As soon as we walked into the restaurant, we saw Mary and Tom walking in together, holding hands and looking happy. Mary quickly dropped Tom's hand when she saw us. Tom smiled awkwardly and said, "What a coincidence. The place is pretty full. Mind if we share your table?" Before we could answer, Mary sat down right next to me. Nina's eyes went wide, and she jumped up to switch places. "What are you doing?" Nina said. "I can't sit with your first love. That's not right." Mary got pushed to sit across from me, looking annoyed. I could feel her staring, waiting for me to say something, but I avoided her eyes and handed the menu to Tom. "Order whatever you want," I told him. "My sister and I already know what we're getting." Tom took the menu with a smile and said, trying to sound casual, "George, your cooking is way better than any restaurant." His comment confirmed what I'd suspected. Those meals Mary kept asking me to make were really for him. I just smiled, saying nothing. Nina jumped in, half teasing and half proud. "You should have seen him in cooking class. He was the only guy there, but he didn't care. He stuck with it, and now he can do everything. Cook, clean, handle things outside the house. His future girlfriend is going to be so lucky." Mary's smile faded as she listened to Nina's words about my future girlfriend. She took a slow sip of tea and asked casually, "George, are you thinking about dating?" I looked at her, confused. Remembering what she'd said in the bar's private room, I nodded. "I'm 26 now. It's time I started dating. Mary, if you know anyone suitable, please introduce me." "Finally!" Nina was more excited than I was. "I tried setting you up before, but you always said no. Now that you're ready, I'll find you the perfect girlfriend." While Nina bubbled with excitement, Thanks, Mary. That would be great, I replied with a bright smile. The next few days passed without any contact between Mary and me. Then Tom showed up at our house when Nina and I were both home. "What brings you here?" Nina asked. Tom glanced at me nervously before explaining. "Nina, you know Mary and I were childhood sweethearts. Even though we've had our problems, there's still something between us. I was wrong to break up with her before, but now I want to tell her how I feel and get back together. Can you help?" In my past life, I would have jumped in right there, telling him not to waste his time because Mary loved me. But now, I knew better. "Of course," I told Tom. "Mary has always had feelings for you. Go for it. You're perfect for each other." Nina agreed. "Yeah, this could work. We can all see Mary never got over you. If you tell her how you feel, she'll definitely say yes." Tom's face lit up with pride, and when he looked at me, his eyes were full of confidence. A couple days later, Nina and Mary planned the perfect confession scene. They believed you could see someone's true feelings in big moments, so they arranged for everyone to watch an iron flower show at a farmhouse in the countryside. These performances involved throwing molten iron against walls to create spark showers. When we got there, the place was packed. I wanted to stay back from the crowd, but Tom insisted I join them. The crowd pushed and shoved until we ended up right in front row. As soon as the show started, sparks began flying everywhere. Tom jumped at the sparks, trying to hide behind Mary. Seeing how scared he was, Mary's eyes softened with affection. She linked her arm through his and teased, "You're scared of fire but still wanted to get closer? Silly." "It's because you're here," Tom said softly. "When I'm with you, I'm not afraid of anything." Mary's face melted at his words, and she squeezed his hand tight. Watching them, I remembered my marriage to Mary in my past life. I had been so excited about being married, doing everything I could to make our home perfect. But one night, when she was drunk, and I came to pick her up, I overheard her complaining to Tom. "It's like I married a father, not a husband. He controls everything I do. It's so annoying. You were better. You always did things just right, never irritating me." Suddenly a dog ran through the crowd, snapping me out of my memories. People screamed and scrambled to get away. Before I could pull Nina to safety, someone shoved me hard from behind. I stumbled forward, crossing the safety line. The crowd erupted in shouts and warnings. Someone burst through the crowd, and for a split second, my heart jumped, thinking it was Mary coming to help me. But she ran straight past me to Tom, who had also crossed the safety line. I wanted to laugh at myself. What was I expecting? The irony felt like a punch to the gut. Thank goodness Nina reached me in time. She helped me up, supporting my sprained ankle as we slowly made our way out of the crowd. As soon as we got clear, she tugged at my arm excitedly. "The confession scene is all set up. Come on, let's watch." She pulled me toward the farmhouse entrance. Mary's sisters had created something beautiful. They'd wrapped the wishing tree in heart-shaped fairy lights and decorated it with memories, old love letters and photos of Mary and Tom together. Tom stood there holding pink roses, Mary's favorite, as he poured his heart out to her. Mary just stood there, frozen, staring at everything. A soft breeze rustled through the tree, and even though I'd made peace with losing her, my heart still ached a little. I thought to myself, this wind is witnessing their love story. They belong together. This is how it should end. I joined everyone else in clapping and shouting, "Say yes! Say yes!" Mary spun around to face me, looking shocked. "George, have you lost your mind? What about your girlfriend?" Nina's eyes went wide. I stayed calm, shaking my head. "I don't have a girlfriend." Anger flashed across Mary's face as she glared at me. Tom noticed the tension and quickly cut in, pretending to be hurt. "Mary, I fell earlier and hurt my leg. It really hurt. My foot was throbbing so badly I could barely think straight." "She's probably just confused," I said vaguely. "Only a fool would take it seriously," just like I was a fool in my past life, believing Mary loved me deeply, only to discover I was ridiculous for thinking that. Back in my room, I thought about what happened. When I crossed that safety line, I definitely felt someone push me, probably Tom. But why would he do that? Before I could figure it out, Mary showed up. This time, I didn't let her in. I stood blocking the doorway. Mary glanced around the empty hallway and whispered, "I need to talk to you. Let's go inside." "No, Mary. Whatever you need to say it here," I replied. "If someone sees you entering my room, they'll get the wrong idea." She immediately backed off at that. She looked at me seriously. "George, what's wrong with you today? I get it if Tom's playing around, but why are you joining in?" "How is this playing around?" I asked sincerely. "Tom really likes you. I think that's wonderful." Mary's face darkened. "You've changed. You weren't like this before." "How was I before?" Her expression softened into a proud smile. "You used to get so jealous. You'd tell me to stay away from other guys, wouldn't let anyone near me." "And did you ever listen?" The truth was, she never did. She always saw my concerns as childish and unreasonable. Mary paused for a moment before speaking gently. "Are you mad because I didn't help you earlier? Think about it. Nina was there to help you, she's your sister. But Tom needed me. If I hadn't helped him, he could have gotten hurt. You wouldn't want that, right?" She sounded so convincing that if I hadn't seen her run straight to Tom without a second thought for me, I might have believed her. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the window as I faced Mary. "I'm not angry," I said softly, keeping my voice steady. "I honestly think you and Tom would be great together." Before I could elaborate, Nina appeared around the corner, clutching an ice pack, her face bright with concern. "What's everyone talking about?" I plastered on a smile, carefully shifting my weight to avoid putting pressure on my injured foot. "Oh, Mary's just asking my opinion about Tom's confession." The words had barely left my mouth when Mary's warm expression turned to ice. The transformation was striking, like watching a storm gather on a clear day. In a flash, Mary crossed the space between us. Her fingers wrapped around my wrist like a vice, making me wince. "Do you have any idea what you're saying?" she hissed, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. Despite the pain shooting up my arm, I maintained my smile, meeting her gaze directly. "Of course I do, Mary. Isn't Tom the one you've always wanted?" I watched the emotions war in her eyes. Anger, confusion, and something deeper that looked suspiciously like guilt. Nina, bless her oblivious heart, broke the tension. A bitter laugh escaped my dry throat. Of course, it all made sense now. Tom had orchestrated my fall just to test Mary's reaction, to prove she still cared about him. The realization made me feel sick, but my voice was too hoarse to voice the accusations burning in my mind. "Did Mary actually tell you she has feelings for me?" I managed to rasp out. Tom set down the lunchbox and settled onto the sofa beside me, too close for comfort. "I figured it out myself," he said smoothly. "Think about it. You're the one she's always around. Why would she spend so much time with you if there wasn't something there?" "Because of my sister," I countered, the words scraping my throat. "Mary's like family to me, a second sister, nothing more." I paused, choosing my next words carefully. Actually, Mary and I should never have been anything beyond friends. Setting things straight now is just returning everything to how it should be. Doubt flickered across Tom's face. "Really? You honestly don't have feelings for her?" "No," I said firmly, memories of my past life washing over me like cold water. After everything I've experienced, and seeing how she truly feels, I let the words trail off, not needing to explain how completely my love for her had died. "Well, if you say so, I believe you," Tom said, his posture relaxing. "You know, George, you're smart and talented. Under different circumstances, we could have been great friends." After he left, his words haunted me, echoing painfully with memories from my past life. I remembered the day before my wedding to Mary, when Tom had come to me just like this. He'd shown me evidence of their relationship, insisted that Mary was only marrying me out of obligation. "She'll never love you," he'd said then. "Calling off the wedding would be better for everyone." I hadn't believed him. I'd been so certain of Mary's feelings, so sure we'd find happiness together. Reality had proved me painfully wrong. These thoughts chased me into an uneasy sleep, where memories from both lives tangled together like thorny vines. I woke up drenched in sweat, feeling grimy and disoriented. Forcing myself up, I grabbed my pajamas and stumbled to the bathroom. A hot shower helped clear my head, but when I returned to my room, my phone's screen was glowing with notifications. 10 missed calls from Mary. I deliberately ignored them, opening my chat with Nina instead. "Sister, something's come up tomorrow," I typed. "I need to head home early. I won't be able to travel back with you." It was a sudden change to our 3-day plan, cutting it down to just one, but I needed to escape. I left early the next morning before anyone else was awake. Only Nina knew I was going. After a 5-hour bus ride home, I'd barely set my bags down when my phone rang. Mom calling, unaware of the chaos I was running from. My mother's voice crackled through the phone, excitement evident. "I hear you're finally open to dating. I found the perfect girl for you. She's 2 years younger, gentle, and pretty. You should meet her." Ever since college graduation, Mom had been playing matchmaker, unaware that I'd spent 7 years of my life with Mary, both in this life and the last. "Sure, Mom. Just set it up and let me know when." The words came out easily, surprising even me. There was a pause on the other line. "You're agreeing? Just like that?" Mom's voice was thick with suspicion. Did something happen? I couldn't help but laugh, though it felt hollow. What could possibly happen? Just arrange it. You're my real mother. You wouldn't steer me wrong, would you? "Of course not, sweetheart. I'll let you know the details soon." After hanging up, I dove into my work, determined to focus on my career. In my previous life, I'd sacrificed a crucial promotion to prioritize my marriage, ignoring everyone's warnings. I'd given up everything for love, only to spend a lifetime watching that sacrifice turn to ash. Not this time. This time, I wouldn't let anything, or anyone, derail my career path. I switched off my phone to avoid distractions and lost myself in work until 9 in the evening. When I finally finished, I decided against turning my phone back on. Sleep seemed more appealing than dealing with whatever messages awaited me. But the next morning, fate had other plans. As I opened my door, ready for work, I found Mary standing there. She was still wearing yesterday's white dress, now wrinkled from travel. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, and exhaustion had left dark shadows under her eyes. She looked like she'd traveled through the night to get here. "Mary, what brings you here? Why weren't you answering your phone?" Our questions collided in the doorway. I steadied myself, forcing a casual smile. "My phone was off. I didn't notice." "That's it? That's all you have to say?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Since when do you need anything?" The practiced indifference in my voice felt like armor. "Mary, what do you want from me? Can we talk normally?" Frustration crept into her tone. When did we become such strangers? She couldn't understand this sudden change, how I'd stopped orbiting around her like a devoted satellite. "What do you mean? I've always been like this." "Don't call me sister," she snapped. "You know how much I hate that title." A bitter smile tugged at my lips. "You told me to stop clinging to you, and I did exactly that." "Isn't this what you wanted?" I asked, my voice steady. "Oh, and don't forget, you said you'd find me a girlfriend better than you. Remember that?" "George, are you trying to drive me insane?" Mary's fingers dug into my wrist as her face contorted with anger. "I was drunk when I said those things. How could you take drunk talk seriously?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "We haven't even broken up yet. Don't you dare think about being with another woman." But I did take it seriously. I yanked my hand free from her grip, feeling the sting where her nails had left marks. The moment those words left your mouth, we were done. But since you need clarity, let me spell it out. We're broken up. From now on, we're nothing more than casual acquaintances. Casual acquaintances? Her voice rose to a shout, echoing in the hallway. Did you think about my feelings at all before making that decision? I drew in a deep breath, steeling myself. Mary, I regret it. I regret ever being with you. That's why I'm ending this now. You understand that, don't you? No, I don't. Her eyes flashed dangerously. What gives you the right to just decide we're over? If only she knew about the wasted years from my past life. Instead, I changed tactics. Mary, let's talk about Tom. You can't let him go, can you? And he still loves you. He stepped aside for us, but what more do you want? He's in the past. Her voice cracked with emotion. I won't get back together with him. Her agitation peaked as she continued. If he bothers you that much, I'll cut all contact with him. I swear, from now on, it'll only be you, nobody else. As if on cue, her phone rang. She immediately rejected the call, but it rang again seconds later. I caught a glimpse of the screen, Tom's name flashing insistently. She rejected it again. On the third ring, I said quietly, "Maybe you should answer it. Could be important." She hesitated, conflict clear on her face, before finally accepting the call. The moment she put the phone to her ear, chaos erupted from the speaker, the unmistakable sounds of screaming and chaos that follow a car accident. Mary's face drained of color as she listened to the phone. "It's okay. Stay calm," she said, her voice trembling. "Just give me a few minutes. He'll be there soon." After hanging up, worry clouded her eyes, but she still managed to address me firmly. "George, there's an emergency I need to handle right now, but this conversation isn't over. Don't you dare think we're broken up. We'll finish this later." She rushed off before I could respond, leaving me standing in my doorway. I shrugged it off and headed to work. Later that afternoon, as my workday was winding down, my phone rang. Mom again. "I've set up the blind date," she announced cheerfully. "They'll send you the restaurant details soon. And don't you dare stand her up, young man." "Got it, Mom. I'll write everything down," I replied, walking toward the company entrance. Then I stopped dead in my tracks. Nina and Mary were standing there, waiting. I quickly ended the call and approached them, my heart racing. "Sister, what brings you here?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Nina beamed. "Just finished a collaboration meeting nearby. Thought I'd grab you for a celebratory lunch since it's about that time." Behind her, Mary's eyes burned into me with an intensity that was hard to ignore. I deliberately avoided her gaze as I climbed into Nina's car. Mary's displeasure was palpable in the silence, but she held her tongue. At the restaurant, we had barely ordered when Nina's face lit up with remembrance. "Oh, right. I heard Mom's arranged a blind date for you. She said you actually agreed this time. Are you really going?" The cup in Mary's hand trembled, water sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "What blind date?" she demanded, her voice sharp. I ignored her question, addressing Nina instead. "Yeah, it's all set up. Did you think I wasn't serious before?" Mary's laugh was harsh, bordering on hysterical. "George, I'm still here," she spat out. "Who gave you permission to go on blind dates?" Nina's forehead creased in confusion. "Permission? Why would George need your permission?" "What are you talking about?" Nina's voice cut through the restaurant's quiet atmosphere. "This is the first I'm hearing about you two being together." She turned to me, eyes searching. "George, is what she's saying true?" I looked between them, Nina's confused anger, and Mary's desperate hope, and slowly shook my head. No, Mary and I have no relationship. The words fell like stones into still water. Mary shot up from her chair, her face a mask of betrayal. George, you can be angry with me, but you can't just deny everything we had. Well, Nina said slowly, her analytical mind taking over. If you were together, you must have some proof, right? Mary froze, the color draining from her face. In that moment, 7 years of memories flashed through my mind. 7 years without a single photograph together because she didn't like taking pictures. Once I'd tried to capture just our shadows, a small piece of evidence of our time together. Her rage when she discovered that photo had been volcanic, and she'd watched me delete it. Our dates were always conducted at arm's length, literally. She maintained a careful 2-meter distance, perpetually fearful of being spotted by someone she knew. Even our online conversations were one-sided, with me always initiating, always waiting for her brief responses. 7 years, and we had nothing to show for it. Not a single piece of evidence that we'd ever been more than acquaintances. Nina watched Mary's wordless struggle with growing skepticism. Look, I know George is handsome and successful. People are naturally drawn to him. But this fantasy you've created? She shook her head. You need professional help, Mary. This isn't healthy. Mary's eyes filled with angry tears. She choked out, then turned to me, her voice breaking. George, please, tell her it's true. Tell her you're my boyfriend. Tell her about our 7 years together. I met her pleading gaze with cold detachment. Mary, stop this. You're causing misunderstandings. My denial was absolute. She had no proof, and I wouldn't acknowledge what we'd had. Our 7 years existed only in our memories now, a secret history I was choosing to erase. Nina, growing increasingly uncomfortable with Mary's behavior, cut lunch short and pulled me away. In the car, she gripped the steering wheel tightly. George, I've noticed Mary acting strange lately. You should keep your distance from her. Back home, I stood over a small fire, watching the wedding ring sketches curl and blacken. Each design had been carefully crafted with love and hope, now just ash and smoke. Those 7 years would stay locked in the depths of my memory, never to surface again. Fearing Mary's persistence, I called my mother. Mom, I want to move back home for a while. She grumbled about the sudden decision, but still showed up with boxes and helping hands. Soon, my childhood bedroom became my sanctuary again. The blind date my mother arranged turned out to be a surprise, a junior from my university days. She was exactly as Mom described, gentle and beautiful, with expressive eyes that couldn't quite hide how she felt about me. I recognized something familiar in the way she looked at me, something I'd missed years ago. During our dinner, I decided honesty was the best approach. I'm not ready for a relationship right now, I told her. My heart needs time. Her response caught me off guard. Then I'll wait, she said simply, a soft smile playing on her lips. Until you're ready to like me back. That's when it hit me. She'd noticed me back in university, while I'd been too buried in textbooks to see her. We fell into an easy friendship after that, sharing stories and laughter, both carefully respecting the unspoken boundary between us. But Mary refused to let go. She'd appear outside my office, waiting like a ghost from my past. Nina, witnessing this, finally snapped and confronted her. Later over dinner, Nina was still seething. Can you believe her? She was practically glued to Tom before, and now she claims she's been with you for 7 years? She's delusional. Nina stabbed at her food. Thank goodness you never actually dated her. Imagine having a girlfriend who's always hanging around another man. Someone like her, Nina continued, who can't see reality clearly. She's better off as just a friend, never a girlfriend. I nodded, pushing my food around. Yeah, I don't understand her thinking anymore. Me? With her? Impossible. The 7 years we'd shared felt like a distant dream now, fading with each passing day. When the company offered me a chance to study abroad, I grabbed it without hesitation. I only told my family and my junior about the opportunity, a fresh start, away from old ghosts. But life had one more surprise waiting. As I walked through the airport arrival gates, exhausted from the long flight, a familiar figure stood waiting. My junior, her face bright with welcome. "What are you doing here?" I asked, genuinely surprised and pleased to see her. She grinned, adjusting her bag. "Business trip coincidence. When I heard your flight was today, I thought you might appreciate a friendly face." "You're quite resourceful, figuring out my arrival time," I said, impressed that she'd managed to find me in the bustling New York airport. A nearby man holding a pickup sign chuckled. "Resourceful? This young lady has been here since morning," he called out. "I've watched her check the flight schedule more times than I can count." My junior's cheeks flushed pink at being exposed, and something warm bloomed in my chest. The sight of her standing there, having waited hours just to welcome me, touched something I thought had frozen over. "Thank you," I said softly, meaning it more than she knew. "Thank you for bringing warmth to this unfamiliar place." In the weeks that followed, she became my anchor in this new world. She showed me around the city, patiently explaining everything from the subway system to the best coffee shops. She'd created detailed notes about who to contact for various situations, thinking of things I hadn't even considered yet. Whenever she had a free moment, she'd make the journey from her home to New York, always arriving with care packages filled with familiar snacks and treats from home. She brought pieces of comfort to this foreign place, turning it slowly into something that felt like home. 6 months later, watching her laugh at something I'd said, I realized my heart had healed without me noticing. When I finally confessed my feelings, it felt as natural as breathing. Nina's congratulatory message arrived soon after, along with some news from home. "Good thing you left when you did," she wrote. "Mary's gone off the deep end. She's not with Tom anymore, but she's dating guys who look like you. Gets drunk and calls out your name. It's painful to watch." I stared at the message for a long moment before closing it without reply. That chapter of my life was firmly closed now. Mary and those 7 years were like a book I'd finished reading. I could remember the story, but I no longer lived in those pages. Looking out at the New York skyline, my junior's hand warm in mine, I knew with certainty that some paths only lead forward. The past might have shaped me, but it no longer defined me. My future was here, in this moment, and I wouldn't waste a second looking back.